This is a bit awkward for me, considering I've been sort of mocking the looks of the Hyundai Elantra since the new model first came out. And then it showed up in my driveway, looking not unlike a red catfish with dental work. But is there more to the Hyundai Elantra than just its polarizing exterior? Does true beauty actually lie on the inside?
It's just something ugly people say.
I mean, I hope it does, for my sake. And in the case of the Elantra, yes, it does. What's going on, everyone? Jax here, and today I have the 2021 Hyundai Elantra Limited. Try not to be too distracted by the gaping maw behind me, and let's try to look at the Hyundai Elantra like a little bit more objectively. The design is certainly interesting, and from some angles it doesn't look that bad, and the overall proportions are all right. I especially like the sort of rear three-quarter view because the lighting elements on this car are pretty distinctive, and I think that's the view where it sort of looks the best. In fact, if I'm being honest, I would argue that the Hyundai Elantra could actually be a pretty attractive car with the right makeover. You know, like those teen movies where the girl takes her glasses off and suddenly she's the best looking girl in the school. Okay, maybe not that, but you get what I mean. Hyundai has been a little bit all over the map in regards to design, but I think if they sort of tone down the creases and reduce the dental work like they do on the N-Line model, things would improve drastically. There's definite potential here, let's leave it at that. But I do like the fact that, my opinion notwithstanding on the exterior styling, the Hyundai Elantra isn't like overselling itself in terms of sportiness or intent. This is a well-equipped and desirable small sedan with a number of standard features and even luxury features, and it's not really screaming through its design that it's like a sports sedan. It's not sort of false advertising, the way the Nissan Sentra's admittedly good-looking exterior sort of advertises a performance credibility that's just not there. And that's a good thing, because the Elantra certainly can't back up any performance credentials in any meaningful way, at least not in this limited trim. Its 147 horsepower four-cylinder, no turbos here, puts out a very acceptable 132 pound-feet of torque. And it all runs through a actually very decent continuously variable transmission. It's a powertrain that Hyundai calls SmartStream, which sounds a lot like a bidet. You know, the thing that like shoots water on your bum when you're done.
Bidet.
The plus side is that the Elantra gets over 40 miles per gallon on the highway, which gives it a pretty impressive range for such a small car. But on the negative side, it can barely get out of its own way. The powertrain is definitely adequate, and the CVT makes the most out of the meager horsepower, but it is certainly not fast. But to be fair, the Sentra isn't really much different in terms of powertrain. It's not very fast either, and both the Civic and Corolla in their comparable trim levels are not laying down drag strip numbers, so you probably won't notice it if you're just buying it for day-to-day transportation. And the Elantra isn't really trying to compete with those cars in terms of speed or style. Definitely not style. It's trying to compete with them in substance and style. Interior style. And it's here where the Elantra is extremely successful. And there is absolutely nothing to mock in this interior, at least not from a style standpoint. If you're ever wondering how to make a sort of budget-friendly car look expensive, Hyundai has absolutely nailed it with the Elantra. Now that does come with a bit of a catch that I'll come back to in a second. The design of the Elantra's interior is fantastic. It really looks upscale. And in this limited trim, you get all of the sort of features that you'd expect, especially from Hyundai, which is sort of known for sort of packing its cars full of value. You get leather seats, digital gauges, and all the infotainment and safety, connectivity, and systems that you would expect in an upper level trim. It even has sort of an asymmetrical color scheme on the driver and passenger sides that sort of flow into the overall design of the interior, and it looks really cool. It looks special, and I really like what Hyundai has done here, until you actually touch it. And while the leather on the seats and the steering wheel is supple enough, and the denim on the doors is a nice touch, I don't really know what it is. I'm gonna call it denim because it sort of looks like denim, and I think it's cooler to call it denim. But I really like that. I think it's a cool touch. Quite a lot of the plastic is hard, like really hard plastic. You know, like harder than stepping on a Lego in the dark in bare feet. Most of the touch points are soft plastic or they're padded, so we're not talking Hyundai Venue levels of offensiveness here, but still, it's a bit of a shame in a car that's so loaded with technology and sort of thoughtful touches like the digital gauge cluster. They didn't have to do that, and it doesn't really do anything all that fancy, but it looks cool and it makes you feel a little bit special. So some of these harder interior plastics are a little disappointing. It's definitely got a baby Benz vibe going on here thanks to this sort of wraparound digital display though, and that is a good thing. Although this fake as shit blanked out gauge over here needs to die. I don't know what that is, but it's like a horror movie villain, like this kind of thing with like no face on it. It's just sort of there. What are you?
Have reckoning.
Well, here we are behind the wheel of the 2021 Hyundai Elantra Limited, which means it has the regular engine, not the hotter engine from the N line. And that means that the engine has just enough power. I mean, you got like 147 horsepower here, not a ton, 132 pound-feet of torque, less than that, but it feels okay. It gets up, it moves, you gotta kind of cane it a little bit. Credit to the CVT transmission though for really making the most out of this engine. There's nothing wrong with the engine. It's relatively quiet, relatively smooth. Sorry if the flickering sunlight is giving you an epileptic seizure. But the CVT does a good job of throwing in some simulated ratios, getting the car up to speed, and it doesn't hang revs, so it's not annoying. It doesn't kind of drone on the engine, you know, and the engine is relatively quiet, so you're not getting a bunch of harshness or coarseness coming from the engine. Overall, it's a good example of a CVT, kind of like how you would like a CVT to perform in day-to-day duties. I don't really know what other duties you would require from a CVT, because it's not like you're gonna put it in a performance car, but whatever. One thing I noticed immediately after jumping into this car was that the steering is incredibly light, but it's also incredibly accurate, which is sort of an interesting combination. I don't like the lightness so much. I found myself driving the car more in sport mode for two reasons. One, I feel like the steering is a bit too light, and the other is that the throttle pedal feels really kind of just unresponsive. It's trying very hard to keep things economical in regular mode. And in sport mode, it feels much more attentive, we'll say, much more tuned to like what you're trying to do. It responds much more quickly, and not like sports car quick, more like what I want a car to respond like quick, like normal quick. Steering wheel also feels nice, but it's a bit weird looking, to be honest. All right, we're turning on to the handling road here, and this is important because this car has a very well-sorted chassis, very well-tuned suspension. We go over this first rough patch, which hits on the right side of the car here, and the Elantra really soaks that up well. It's not riding firm like a sporty car, but the body control is very impressive, especially the up and down motions. You get a compliant suspension, but it's not floaty, it's not bouncy. I was very surprised to find this ride to be so comfortable and so well controlled. It feels borderline luxurious, which I know the limited trim is kind of going for that. But I'm telling you, this is an impressive suspension setup. Just surprising. Ooh, there's the big dip. not even a big deal. I was saying it's surprising because this car has a torsion beam rear suspension, which is like, you know, the front wheel drive equivalent of a live rear axle, basically. And I don't really mind it. It handles well. I mean, the Mazda 3 also has a torsion beam rear suspension for cost purposes and handles incredibly well considering. But this is a very comfortable ride, very comfortable, and it never gets out of sorts. So well done, Hyundai, on this ride. This is absolutely what you'd want your day-to-day commuter, daily driver car to handle like. You know, assuming you're a normal person and not like a maniac like I am. Although, dare I say it, I'm getting old and even I have limits now. Other than that, from a dynamic standpoint, the brake pedal being kind of your other sort of dynamic input, it's a little mushy and it can be a little grabby at low speeds, but honestly, if we're being fair, that's nothing different from, you know, like Toyota, for example, tends to have a little bit grabby brakes. You're not really going to have the sort of firm progressive feel that you get out of a Mazda 3. But then again, a Mazda 3 costs 10 grand more than this car. Now, you do see that 10 grand in the interior and in the way it drives. And let's be honest, in the way it looks. The Mazda 3 is a gorgeous car, and this is not so much. But the interior in here does look really nice. And considering how well sorted the suspension is, how it just sort of goes about its business and gives you this sort of comfortable daily experience, this is really well done. This is a lot of car for $26,000. Although, you know, you also have players like the Nissan Sentra in this space, which is extremely good in its new iteration and very good looking. But I think you would want to take a real hard look at something like this versus a Corolla. Yes, I know with the Corolla you have this sort of reputation for durability and reliability, and if you were buying a car to drive for like, you know, the rest of your life, you know, then sure, you might want to buy the Corolla. But if you're buying a car that spoils you a little bit and is extremely comfortable and feels good on a daily basis, and, you know, the interior in here is a lot better looking than the Corolla. The materials, it's okay, but overall, unless you're a total nut, then you'll probably be extremely satisfied with the way the Elantra drives. One thing I will note, and I've seen this around my neighborhood and on some of these roads I'm on right now, the lane keep and lane assist systems get a little rambunctious on curvy roads, and I feel them tugging the wheel side to side, even when I'm in the middle of the lane. It's like they see the road curving ahead and sort of anticipate the curve or something. It's a little annoying, but honestly not a big deal. You'd rather have the systems than not, so I think that's a willing trade-off there. But trust me, if you get behind the wheel of this and you drive it day to day, you're going to be very pleased with the way that this car drives. And if you're an enthusiast like me, you'll be very surprised with the way this car drives. Also pretty roomy in here. I've got a fair amount of space. I am a rather tall individual. If you're new to the channel, I am 6'6", and I like to say that often, as is pointed out by my friends. They're all like, bro, we know how tall you are. And I'm like, yes, but the people might not. And there's plenty of space in here for me, and like a normal-ish sized person could sit behind me. I couldn't, I tried. But a normal person could sit behind me, and even a tall person could sit behind a normal height person, if that makes sense. So the back seat has a fair amount of room in it. And my family is fairly tall, so we rode around in this without any problem at all. I do like the little dance that the gauges do when you switch to sport mode, though. It's just, you know, they don't really, it's not like a dynamic gauge cluster, but it's fun, you know, and they spin around and like, you know, woo, turn red and stuff. Yeah, the ride in this is very impressive. So comfortable. Although I don't know if these seats are quite as, no, I'm in the lane. See, there it goes beeping at me. I'm in the lane. What are you beeping about? Man, Hyundai, you're this good at tuning suspensions. Woo. I gotta get behind the wheel of a couple more Genesis models. There's a lot to like in this limited trim, and at just over 26 grand, it represents a lot of value for the money, especially when you consider the features and options. You get a really nice 10.3-inch infotainment display, convincing leather seats, and all of Hyundai's safety systems, except a surround view camera, but But you do get forward collision avoidance systems as well as adaptive cruise control. Although I did find some of the lane keep assist features to be a bit hyperactive, especially on sort of the curvy roads around my neighborhood. They wanted to steer the car or adjust the lane even when it was pretty much in the middle of the lane. Still, I'd rather have more safety systems than less safety systems, so I consider that sort of a minor annoyance. And in typical Hyundai fashion, you get little extra sort of attention to detail, like a little chime that tells you when the car in front of you has pulled away, so you put your phone down at a red light and start driving before people start honking at you. Not that that would ever happen to someone like me, but I noticed this system when it just sort of, okay, so it did happen, but it is a nice system to have. Thanks, Hyundai. Good call on that one. Look, movie magic. Complete change in location and sun. Because a park worker turned on a generator right next to me. Look, bro, I know we're all trying to do our jobs here, but come on. So should you buy a Hyundai Elantra? Well, yes, if you don't mind the way the exterior looks and you like the interior style and you just don't plan to touch it very often. The features and amenities are extensive. The back seat is quite large for my tall family, and the trunk is huge for the class. And it's also an excellent daily driver in a number of ways. But for a little less money, you can get a much better looking car with many of the same options that's as good or better dynamically. It's called the Nissan Sentra, and it doesn't really require an explanation anytime you look at it. Guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this review somewhat helpful. I try to remind myself, even in sort of these challenging conditions when I'm filming in 20-degree weather and it's windy and there's people turning on generators right next to me. Probably stick around for the bloopers to see some of my frustrations. But I try to remind myself that it's sort of a privilege to get to do this, to bring this content to you. And I'm always grateful, I'm always thankful for the views, the comments, the shares, the likes, and all of that kind of stuff. So if you thought this video was useful in any way, please consider liking, please consider subscribing for more car reviews and more car content. And I am going to go thaw myself out because I am a southern boy and this weather doesn't agree with me, all right? Until next time, ride safe, drive safe, and I will catch you in the next review, hopefully in much better conditions, all right? Take care, peace. Well, this day's going downhill fast. Really amp up the quality of your car reviews. My God, my eyes are like watering. The wind is blowing right into my face. But no, you have to drive right between me. You couldn't have gone in the other entrance, you stupid old man.